All right, let's get started. Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Jessica, and I would like to thank you for joining the Oregon Employment Department for our unemployment insurance temporary rule listening session for Tuesday, October 26, 2021. This listening session is being simultaneously interpreted in Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, and Cantonese. If any of you would like to have this webinar simultaneously interpreted, please follow the instructions on the slide. Click the interpretation box in the bottom Zoom bar and then choose your preferred language. The presenter's voice will be lowered while the interpreter speaks over it. You can choose to mute the presenter if you want altogether. These instructions are on the slides in front of you. Please note that we cannot look into or resolve any person's claim or business's issue in this public forum, and it is not safe to put your personal information like a social security number or a business identification number in the chat or question boxes in this public recorded webinar that will be posted online. We're going to wait just another couple minutes to get this started. I want to go back to the original slide to give everybody the opportunity to take a look at the instructions once more. All right. Now I would like, oh, that's just another slide that I missed. Apologies. Now I would like to turn the listening session over to Lindsi Leahy, the Unemployment Insurance Division Director for the Oregon Employment Department.
Thanks, Jessica, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's listening session. During the next 90 minutes, we would like to gather your perspectives on the updates to the availability for work eligibility requirement for unemployment insurance benefits as we explore the possibility of making these changes permanent. The purpose of unemployment insurance benefits is to provide a temporary, partial wage replacement to individuals who are out of work through no fault of their own. These benefits help keep individuals in their local communities, create an available workforce for local businesses, and provide economic stability to local economies. We saw this in action during the pandemic, where from March 15th of 2020 through September 20th of 2021, unemployment benefits provided an infusion of over $10.9 billion into Oregon's economy. Unemployment insurance benefits are paid weekly based on the individual meeting all eligibility criteria, including being able to work, being available for work, and actively seeking work for each week that an individual claims benefits. The temporary amendment to Oregon Administrative Rule 471-030-0036 modifies the availability for work requirement so that workers who are seeking shift-based work only need to be available for at least one shift instead of a minimum of 2 shifts, which was the requirement under the old rule. For work that isn't shift-based, workers need to be available for full-time work. In most occupations, this is 40 hours per week. However, for some occupations, full-time work is fewer than 40 hours. Under the old rule, a worker needed to be available for work during all the usual days and hours of the week customary for the type of work they are seeking, which, depending on the industry, could add up to that individual needing to be available for more than 40 hours in any given week. We have notified people receiving benefits about this rule amendment, and our online temporary eligibility rule FAQ has more information. To find the FAQ, go to unemployment.oregon.gov, click on Frequently Asked Questions, and then scroll down to Temporary Availability Rule Change. If you would like to read the rule itself, please visit oregon.gov/employ/agency and click on OED Administrative Rules. To help explain the changes, I'm going to go over 3 scenarios that show the difference this new rule will make for people receiving unemployment insurance benefits. Please remember that unemployment insurance eligibility issues are reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and these scenarios are just examples. If you have questions about your specific availability requirements or possible issues, please use our Contact Us form at unemployment.oregon.gov or call 1-877-345-3484. Scenario 1. So in this scenario, your occupation, the type of work that you're seeking, has day, evening, and night shifts, but you have limited childcare options in your area. Previously, you had to be available for 2 of these shifts to be eligible for benefits. So the limited childcare during, for example, the day and evening shifts would have caused an availability issue. Now, with the rule change for this scenario, you need to be available for the night shift, so that same conflict would not be an issue. For scenario 2, you're looking for work in an industry that is open 24 hours. Under the old rule, you had to be available for all the hours and days of the week to be eligible for benefits. Under the new rule, you only have to be available for at least 40 hours a week, unless full-time for your occupation is usually defined as less than 40 hours a week. And then the last scenario, the normal hours for your customary occupation are worked from 6 o'clock a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. 7 days a week. Previously, you had to be available for all of those hours and days. However, in this scenario, you take the bus to work, and the bus doesn't run on Sundays in your area. In this scenario, if you didn't have another form of transportation to get to work on Sundays, you would not be eligible for benefits. Under the new rule, you only need to be available for at least 40 hours per week, unless full-time for your occupation is defined as less than 40 hours. So the lack of transportation on Sundays, in this particular example, is no longer an availability issue as long as you're available for full-time work. So I will wrap up by saying, as a result of the pandemic, the labor market today looks and acts differently from what it did prior to March of last year. And the Employment Department wants to keep step with those changes by updating our eligibility requirements while continuing to remain within the federal framework for the program. And we believe this change helps us do that. I look forward to hearing your comments and questions, and I thank you for your participation today. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Jessica.
Thank you, Lindsi. Now we're going to move on to the details about this afternoon's listening session. This webinar is being recorded and we will post it on our webinar page after the listening session has ended. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand and I will call on people in order hands are raised. Since this listening session is limited to 90 minutes, you'll have up to 5 minutes to comment. We reserve the right to reduce the comment time up to 2 minutes if a large number of people would like to comment. That way, we can be sure everyone has an opportunity to be heard. If there is limited participation, we may end the webinar early if there are no more questions or comments. Remember, do not put your personal or business information in the Q&A or chat box. For help with a claim issue, please use our Contact Us form at unemployment.oregon.gov or call 1-877-345-3484. If you do not want to speak but have a question you would like answered, please put your question in the Q&A box. Please remember we cannot answer questions specific to your claim. Do not enter your social security number or business identification number in the Q&A or chat, as this recording will be available online. And if you have technical difficulties or are unable to ask your question, please send an email to oed_communications@employ.oregon.gov and we will assist you. Our unemployment insurance listening session panelists are available to answer your questions. They are Lisa, Tim, Carol, and Zulmar. If you have questions in Spanish, please type it into the chat or raise your hand so Zulmar may translate. If you have a question in another language, please type it into the chat and we will follow up with you after the webinar. And I apologize, I'm behind on my slides, I'm realizing. So if the slides aren't matching up, I apologize. There we go. Okay, we are now beginning the comment and question section. I will call on you in order, and please make sure you state your full name and tell us if you are making a comment or asking a question. If you are joining us by phone, please be sure to hit *6 to unmute yourself when you are called on so that you can comment. If technical difficulties prevent you from asking your question or making a comment, please email oed_communications@employ.oregon.gov. And a reminder, we cannot look into or resolve any person's claim in this public forum, and it is not safe to put your personal information in the chat or question boxes in this public recorded webinar that will be posted online later. During the public comment period, there are times that I will put up different scenarios in English, Spanish, Russian, Simplified Chinese, and Vietnamese. I will now pause for a minute or so to give people time to raise their hands. Remember, our online contact us form. Use our online contact us form or call us for help with your personal or business claim issues. And it looks like we have one hand raised. One moment. There we go. So, Courtney, see?
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. I just have a question. And I was looking at the draft changes and it looks like section 4 is deleted and it which had to do with availability to work in relation to availability to access childcare. And then I was just having a hard time with all of the track changes and potential new language and everything. Would this temporary rule, or does this temporary rule, and if it did end up becoming permanent, would it change it so that if someone couldn't find childcare or somewhere to safely place their kid while they were at work, that they wouldn't qualify for UI, or that as long as they could at least get to one shift, then they could? I was just a little confused.
Is that a Tim or a Carol question? Somebody?
I can answer the question. So section 4, which was removed, had specified that if childcare was a barrier to being available for work, then if the individual's work they were performing was performed 3 shifts, then they needed to be available for a minimum of 2 shifts. And if the work that they were seeking was performed a minimum of 2 shifts, then they needed to be available for 1 shift. So under this update, the temporary rule, availability now is defined as being available for just a minimum 1 shift or 40 hours per week. And so the updates do make it easier to qualify or to meet the eligibility requirements, the availability requirements, because we're only asking them individuals to be available for 1 shift or a minimum of 40 hours a week.
Thank you for that clarification. Now that I was able to ask the question, is it okay if I take this opportunity now just to comment on that?
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I should have said, my name is Courtney Hellstein. I'm the political director at Family Forward Oregon. And we advocate on behalf of mothers and caregivers. And I think that I think obviously making it easier right now for parents and particularly mothers to qualify for unemployment insurance because of lack of childcare is really important. However, my suggestion is if that you're going to make this permanent, that when it comes to childcare, I would advocate that there shouldn't be a minimum requirement at all, or at least we should lower the 40-hour requirement. Childcare is incredibly difficult for folks to find right now. We were in a prior to the pandemic, every single county in our state was a childcare desert for at least one age group, and that was before the pandemic. We quickly lost about half of our childcare supply. We've only been able to regain on very shaky ground about half of that back. So we're operating at an even larger deficit of childcare availability than we were even before the pandemic started. And this is a huge impact, particularly for, we've seen a mass exodus, particularly disproportionately women and women of color, because they had to leave because of childcare. And even if they would like to work, they would love to, we're hearing from moms every single day that they just literally have nowhere safe to place their kids. And so if we don't create some more allowances for this to match the current reality of our situation, this is going to disproportionately impact women and women of color. And so I would just strongly encourage the agency to go further than this change and provide as much flexibility as the federal government will legally allow us on childcare and qualifying for UI. Otherwise, we're just going to continue the disproportionate impacts on women and women of color, and we're just going to drag out the economic consequences for these folks in particular. And so happy to answer any follow-up questions, but that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for providing that comment, Courtney. We appreciate it. And we know that this is an extremely important issue for many Oregonians, and it's definitely something that we're thinking about when we're striving for greater equity. We do have a federal framework we have to stay within, so there are only so much flexibility that we can provide, but we definitely appreciate you participating today and providing that perspective. So thank you.
All right. Do we have anybody else who would like to comment or has a question on the temporary availability rule? Please raise your hand, or you can also type it into the chat. Oh, here we go. So we do have one question in our comment box. And I apologize, I will probably mispronounce your name, so I apologize. Jasem Agesh. And the question is, what can I do in order to receive unemployment under this new rule?
I'll try to answer the question. First off, just in general terms, this rule change does not is specific to being available for work. It doesn't update any other eligibility requirements in order to receive benefits. So to be eligible, a person needs to have a certain amount of work and earnings during a particular period in order to qualify for a claim. And then they need to meet the able to work and actively seeking work requirements under the law and the rule. In terms of specific to availability, an individual needs to be available and willing to accept work for at least 40 hours a week if their work is done hourly, or for at least one shift if their work is done on a shift-based schedule.
Thank you, Tim. We have another question from Courtney, which is this the furthest we can go on childcare flexibility and still stay within federal rules, or could we go further?
So I can take that. I can tell you, thank you for the input again. And we are still looking at how much we can be flexible and stay within the federal guidelines on this. There is some research that we are continuing to do to ensure that we have been as flexible as we can while staying within the federal guidelines. So I don't have a full answer for you yet, but I can tell you that this is an important issue and we are looking into it, as well as looking into other potential availability issues within the framework of the Department of Labor guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And thank you for the question. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or make a comment on the temporary availability rule? Just a reminder, you can either type your comment or question into the chat or Q&A box, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. While we wait to see if somebody, oh, I see we have a chat. 1 second. One more comment from Courtney. In general, and this is from the chat box, so I'll be saying it out loud. Final comment, in general, I appreciate and agree with the direction the agency is going. Would love to get further on childcare. The only projection mothers have right now regarding childcare unavailability is OFLA or OFLA, but that isn't paid, so it isn't financially practical for most families. Right now, the only protection, is that what you meant, Chelsea? If you would like, you can also unmute yourself. I think you still have that ability.
Yeah, sorry, the only protection. So BOLI had a temporary rule for allowable reasons for folks who qualify for OFLA, which actually isn't every worker in Oregon, that if like childcare or school closures were something that happened and prevented folks from going to work, that was an allowable use under OFLA. But that isn't a paid benefit. And so a lot of it's still just not practical. So like if, particularly until we have some type of paid leave benefit in the state, like this is really the only thing we've got. So yeah.
Thank you, Courtney. All right. Sorry, something just went weird with the screen share. One moment. Here we go. Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. Does anybody else have any comments or questions regarding the temporary availability rule? Once again, a reminder that you can raise your hand or type your comment or question in the chat box or Q&A box. Once again, is there anyone who would like to make a comment or question on, or has a question on the temporary availability rule? You can raise your hand or type it into the chat box. Once again, just a quick call for anybody who has any comments or has a question on the temporary availability rule. Please raise your hand or you can type your comment and question into the chat box. Currently, we're just moving through the different scenarios that we showed earlier, just in different languages so that everybody has the opportunity to learn about the different scenarios. There we go. Start back from the beginning. Okay. Once again, if you have any comments or questions on the temporary availability rule, please feel free to raise your hand or type your question or comment into the chat box. I'm going to do one last call. Anybody who has a comment or has a question regarding the temporary availability rule, please raise your hand and I will unmute you if you would like to speak. Otherwise, you can also type in your comment or question into the chat box and I will then say your question aloud or comment aloud. And give it just a few more minutes. One last call for any comments or questions.
This is Courtney. I actually did have one more question. Do you all have any sense of if, so I know these are temporary rules now, when do they expire? And then when would the agency be looking to potentially make these rules permanent? And is this part of, I guess, like, where are you at in that process?
Thank you, Courtney. Would that be, I feel like it'd be either Lindsi or Lisa, potentially Tim. Literally anybody. Sorry. Like, I'm not sure who would answer that one.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I am looking to the team for the date. So temporary rules are in place for 180 days, which I believe is March-ish. I'm looking to see. Okay, so we could get back to you if you like on the actual expiration date from when the data was put into place. But through the listening sessions, and then also just kind of taking a look at are there disproportionate impacts to employers? Is this doing what we intend for it to do? Just looking at all of that. So it'll probably be around the March's timeframe. We might do something earlier. We're hoping to not have a gap if we want to make this permanent. So it would be around that timeframe. But basically, we're going to be monitoring activity and looking at data and kind of having that inform our decisions as far as like timing. So I don't have a specific timeframe, but definitely not longer than what's legally allowed, which is that 180
Got
days.
it. Thank you.
Yep.
So we do have the time frame. It was effective September 26, 2021, and it goes through March 24th, 2022 as a temporary rule.
Thanks, Lisa.
Mhm.
All right. Any last comments, questions? Once again, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat box. Give you a few more minutes since we don't really have a lot of people left. All right. Okay, so since we don't have any more questions or comments, this will conclude our listening session comment period. There are additional listening sessions available. Those dates and times are for worker-focused sessions. We have one more on Tuesday, November 9th at 6 p.m. And then for employer-focused sessions, we have two left, and that will be Wednesday, November 3rd at noon, and Wednesday, November 17th at 9 a.m. This listening session was recorded, and we will post it on the Employment Department's webinar page at unemployment.oregon.gov/webinars. And thank you all for taking the time to provide feedback and participate today, and we appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.